recording.
Okay. Okay. In high school, which songs do you remember and why?
I remember listening, like, I guess the first album I really remember would be the soundtrack from Grease. My parents used to listen to that when we were driving around, right around like 1979. And then the first two albums I remember, like from my high school years, would be like the Van Halen Jump album and Prince's Purple Rain album.
Okay. Let's see. Which singers or bands do you remember most from your life? What were your favorites and how did that music touch your heart? So, just, I guess, in general, which singers or bands?
Peter Gabriel had an album after he had gotten divorced. And that was Peter Gabriel's Us album. And a friend of mine, his parents got divorced. And so we wound up listening to that a lot. That was around the same time as Sting's Fields of Gold album, which was actually called 10 Summoners' Tales. And that was another really, really good album.
Okay. Okay. Think about most of your important relationships of your life. Are there certain songs that remind you of your mother, your father, family members, or friends?
Yeah. My mother was a really big Dionne Warwick fan. And when my parents got divorced, I went to school in Northern California and she lived in Southern California. Dionne Warwick used to have this song called Reservations for Two. I remember that always reminded me of her. Yeah, that's what stands out.
Okay. As you have grown older, which music or musicians are your favorites and why do you think you like that music?
I like musicians from the 80s and 90s. It was a time where you really needed to understand music and play instruments and have talent beyond just sitting in front of sequencers on a computer and being able to kind of manufacture music, where you really use like artistic ability with instruments and instrumentation to create really full albums. So I was listening and still listen to Sting and the Police, Depeche Mode, Prince, Journey, albums with a lot of, high production quality from the musician.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Which musicians or bands have you seen in concert, and do any of those experiences stand out?
Yeah, I saw Prince in 1994 in San Jose.
I did not know that.
And that was an incredible experience. He did a guitar solo, maybe 15 or 20 feet from my head. And I was going nuts, and he looked actually down, and I don't know if he was giving me a nod or if that was to someone else that was near me, but it was pretty surreal. A lot of other groups that I just mentioned, I've seen Journey live 2 or 3 times. I've seen the Police twice, and I've seen Depeche Mode in 1990 on their Violator tour. And every one of them was just unbelievably talented and really, really good live.
Okay. Do you have a favorite song or a song that you think describes you?
I would say Eye of the Tiger by Survivor, which was a song they used in the Rocky 3 movie. And it just reminds me of kind of work ethic and persistently working, and even though things are trying to get in your way and slow you down, you just kind of muscle through.
Okay. Which songs, new or old, do you wish that people would stop and really listen to?
I think that the musicality of Purple Rain is pretty amazing, but I think that people don't necessarily recognize it necessarily for its lyrics, and the lyrics from Purple Rain are pretty exceptional. Trying to think of another one. I guess that's the one that stands out.
Okay. And then, what is your earliest memory of music? Do you recall a specific song?
Yeah, my very first, like my first memory of music would be my mother, and I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, and she was listening to Olivia Newton-John. And this would be like 1976, 1977. That would be my earliest.
Okay. Last one. What happened in your life after high school? Describe those days and years, and what songs do you remember listening to?
I graduated high school in 1990. Right after I graduated, there were a couple of albums that came out that were pretty groundbreaking. I mentioned Depeche Mode Violator. That was a really good album. In 1993, Prince had separated from the Revolution and had started a new band, which was Prince and the New Power Generation. And he did an album, and I still remember him performing 4 or 5 of the tracks from that album on the Arsenio Hall show in 1993. It was kind of a golden age of music. The early 90s had a lot of the kind of some of the grunge rock was coming from bands like Nirvana and Blind Melon and folks like that. And so there was some of the bands from the late 80s really hitting their stride and getting more mature in their music, while also a lot of like really grunge rock was coming and hitting the scene pretty hard. And I just remember that being a fan of music that like didn't necessarily just stay in one genre, because I listened to rock, modern rock, grunge rock, R&B, and hip hop. And I remember it was a time of just a wealth of music to listen to. There were so many good albums from those years. And it was a time that was sort of before the internet.
Yeah.
So you did not have the kind of time on your hands that, where you can get to music and things with your phone. We didn't have YouTube back then. We didn't have TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. So the way you passed the time was typically with like music. And so all the time that folks spend on social media now, imagine spending all of that time listening to music. So it was a larger focus in your life because your attention wasn't divided by so many different things.
Okay. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
All right. High five.
Hey.